Let us discuss the modern age in Europe, Reformation. What is Reformation? The Reformation is the name given to a group of religious movements of the 16th century launched by the Christians against the various drawbacks of the church and the objectionable practices of the clergymen. Target of this movement. The main target of these movements was the Pope, the highest authority in the church hierarchy. These movements created a split in the Christian church between those who continued to remain loyal to the Pope at Rome and those who broke away from the church at Rome. The former were known as Roman Catholics and the latter as Protestants. What caused the Reformation? Dissatisfaction with the practices of the Catholic Church. During the 14th century, people became dissatisfied with some of the church practices, and this dissatisfaction paved the way for Reformation. These church practices were the following. First, economic factors. Second, corruption in the church. Third, rulers' resentment. Fourth, movements against the church. And fifth, the immediate cause. Let us see each one of them in detail. First comes the economic factors. In the Middle Ages, the church had vast properties which gave ample income to the church. Besides, 1/10 of the income of a person was given to the church. This was called the tithe. In addition to this, the clergy collected another sum called the Peter's pence from the people. Pope Leo X wanted to build St. Peter's Church, so he issued another pardon certificates called indulgences to those who gave money to build the church. Indulgences were letters which remitted punishments of the sinners who bought them both in this life and after their death. This is an example of an indulgence letter. The church offices were given to the highest bidder. This practice came to be known as simony. All these practices annoyed the rulers as well as the common people as well. Next is the corruption in the church. In the beginning, the clergy led an exemplary life and a luxurious life. They commanded great respect in the society. But with the passage of time, moral decay crept into some areas in the functioning of this church. Some of the clergymen lacked proper education and some lived in luxurious and neglected their own religious duties. The priest promised salvation in exchange for fees. They could pronounce a marriage lawful or unlawful. In fact, there were fees for every transaction in life from birth to death of a person. These practices were severely criticized and opposed by the people. A person known as Desiderius Erasmus, a Dutch philosopher and humanist, exposed them in his book named In Praise of Folly and prepared the ground for the Reformation. Next comes the ruler's resentment. Pope's interference in the political affairs was naturally opposed by the kings. They strongly supported the Reformation movement in order to weaken the church. The French king Philip IV had forced Pope Clement V to leave his headquarters at Rome and stay in Avignon in France when the latter interfered in the former's political affairs. Also, King Henry VIII of England hardly cared for the Pope. He got the church lands and in 1536 passed an act for the dissolution of monasteries, whereby small monasteries with an income of less than 200 a year were closed and their buildings, land and money were taken by the crown. Next comes the Counter-Reformation. Now what was this Counter-Reformation? In order to restore the credibility of the Catholic Church, dedicated Christians and some popes introduced some reforms. This movement came to be known as the Counter-Reformation. Here we have the Council of Trent. The council made a number of changes in the Catholic Church. It expanded its doctrines in the light of the changed attitudes of the times. It condemned leading an irresponsible religious life by the clergy. Books which were considered to have had ideas against the Catholic teaching were banned. The Pope was regarded as the head of the Catholic Church and the final interpreter of the Christian doctrine. Then we have the Society of Jesus. Different religious orders were founded. Ignatius Loyola founded a religious order with the permission of the Pope. This was known as the Society of Jesus. It won many adherents all over the world, like Europe, India, China, Africa, as well as America. Saint Francis Xavier. Saint Francis Xavier was a follower of Ignatius Loyola, as mentioned before. He traveled to China and Japan for the propagation of Christianity. He came to India and worked till his death. His mortal remains are found at the Church of Bom Jesus in Old Goa. The selfless and dedicated service rendered by the Jesuits helped in restoring the credibility of the Roman Catholic Church. So, in this chapter, we conclude by learning three terms: Reformation, the 16th century movement in Europe to reform the church; indulgences, in Christianity, they were a kind of remission granted to a repentant sinner of the punishment due for his sin. Then we have the Protestant, a Christian sect that broke away from the Catholic Church. Thank you.